If you speak to an old sailor, they'll tell you that the sea takes no prisoners. We build our ships, boats, and submarines as best we can, but none of them are 100% safe for a single second when they're out on the water. Sometimes they're not even safe when they're docked. Some strange, mysterious, and downright bizarre incidents have befallen water vessels in the past, and you're going to hear about the weirdest of them in this video. The single biggest vessel in the U.S. Navy during the First World War was the USS Cyclops. From bow to aft, she was 500 feet long and 60 feet wide to go with it. That makes her a difficult ship to lose, but she went missing anyway. The Cyclops was last seen on a coal shuttling mission between Brazil and the USA in March 1918. Her destination was the Chesapeake Bay, but she never turned up, and nobody knows why. Losing ships during the First World War was hardly unusual, but the Cyclops didn't pass through any areas of conflict and never sent a distress signal. Whatever happened to her must have happened very quickly, giving the crew no chance to react. Despite multiple searches at the time and several in the century since, the wreck of the USS Cyclops has never been found. To add to the mystery, the ship's course would have taken it through the Bermuda Triangle. Although there were rumors of a mutiny on board and perhaps even a conspiracy between the captain and the Germans, it seems the Cyclops is yet another unexplained victim of this strange area of sea and sky. Of all the tales that sailors like to tell of seeing ghost ships floating on the horizon, the SS Baychimo is the most persistent. She was a trading vessel and spent most of her active life working a route between Vancouver in Canada and Alaska in the USA. The route was known to be dangerous then and is still considered hazardous today because of the freezing cold conditions and choppy waters. The Baychimo got trapped between shifting sheets of ice in 1931. Fortunately, the crew was able to escape onto the ice and camp out while they waited for the ice to thaw. After a particularly heavy blizzard one night, though, they woke up and crawled out of their tents to discover the Baychimo was gone. The vessel was presumed lost at sea, but she was seen and photographed several times by other trading ships as they traveled along the route. Sometimes she was stuck in the ice, and other times she was floating free. The last confirmed and proven sighting was off the coast of Alaska in 1969. By that point, she'd been drifting alone for nearly 40 years. A team of volunteers went looking for either the Baychimo or her wreck in 2006, but they found nothing. The tale of the SS Baychimo is one of a crew that was saved after their boat went missing. The tale of the MV Joyita is the opposite. The cork-lined ship was found adrift in the South Pacific in 1955. A rescue mission was launched and the Joyita was boarded, at which point it became clear that her engines had failed. She was a sturdy ship and at no risk of sinking, so the standard procedure would have been for the crew to remain aboard and wait to be rescued. Instead, they took all the cargo, climbed into the lifeboats, and abandoned their ship. From there, we have a second mystery. There are several islands close to the place the Joyita was spotted, and the lifeboats should have been able to reach them easily. All of the islands were searched, and neither the crew nor their boats were found. Nobody who was aboard the Joyita was ever seen again. After the Joyita was salvaged, she ran aground twice in quick succession, leading to rumors that the ship was cursed. The rumors put people off the idea of buying her, so she was eventually scuttled. On the west coast of Spain's Basque province of Guipuzcoa is a region called the Itzuran Cliffs. There are some beautiful beaches here, but there are also some very rocky shores and outcrops. That's why bringing a ship in close to get a better look at those beautiful beaches is generally a bad idea. Nobody knows that better than the crew of the Matsuko, a fishing vessel that got stranded here in 2010. Quite how they got stranded here is anybody's guess, though, because they ran away after the incident and are yet to be found. That might have something to do with the environmental disaster that the ship caused when it ran aground. The force of the impact was so violent that it left the ship on its side and ripped open the hull, allowing 12,000 liters of diesel to pour out onto the beach. The smell of the diesel was reported to be potent for more than a year after the incident. The Matsuko shouldn't have been this close to the shore, and having got into danger, it should have sent a warning to the Coast Guard. It never did, and we don't know why. The biggest and most famous passenger steamship ever to experience a disaster while out at sea is the Titanic. The SS Waratah is nowhere near as famous as the Titanic, but perhaps it should be. We should at least acknowledge it as the Titanic of the Southern Hemisphere. The 465-foot-long, 10,000-ton vessel was built for the Blue Anchor Line in 1908 and ferried passengers between Australia and Europe. She was making only her second voyage in July 1909 when she disappeared somewhere between Durban and Cape Town on the coast of South Africa when she vanished. No trace of the ship or its 211 passengers and crew was ever found. There was a hurricane out at sea that day, but there were also many large vessels out on the sea at the time that survived the weather. Extensive searches were carried out at the time, and then modern-day searches involving sonar equipment were carried out as recently as 2004, but all have proven to be fruitless. The Waratah simply vanished without a trace and is presumed to have fallen victim to the hurricane, but we'll never know for sure. Losing any boat or ship is bad for the military. Losing a nuclear submarine is far worse. It almost never happens, but it did happen to the USS Scorpion in May 1968. She was within radio communications range of the naval station Rota in Cadiz, Spain, at the time of her disappearance. The ship attempted to send several radio messages to the station at around midnight on May 20th, but the messages were undecipherable. She was supposed to return home to Norfolk, Virginia by May 27th, but didn't show up. The Atlantic Fleet started looking for her the next day, with 55 ships and 35 planes involved in the search. Several rescue vessels picked up a short radio message that included the Scorpion's code name Brandywine on May 30th, but the source of the messages couldn't be determined. Sections of her hull were eventually located 10,000 feet below the water on October that year. From the observable damage, it seems likely that the Scorpion imploded after reaching and then exceeding its crush depth. No cause was ever identified, but as the sub was monitoring Soviet activity at the time of the disaster, there will always be suspicions of foul play. Speaking of submarines, the first one ever made in America was the HL Hunley. It served the Confederate side in the American Civil War, but its service life was brief. The experimental submarine, which launched in 1864, was 40 feet long and weighed only 7 tons. She made history as the first submarine ever to attack and sink a frigate, but the mission also doomed the Hunley. After sinking the USS Lusitania, the Hunley was expected to arrive back to base to receive a hero's welcome. It never made it home. Nobody knew why until 1995, when the wreck of the Hunley was located off the coast of Charleston, North Carolina. It turns out that bad weapon design was the cause. The Hunley didn't fire torpedoes. Instead, it charged at enemy vessels with explosives mounted on the end of a battering ram. The ram was only 16 feet in length. That's far from long enough to shield the Hunley from the explosion that it caused when it hit the Lusitania. The force of the blast rippled back through the Hunley and crippled the submarine. Ultimately, it sank only a few hundred feet from the wreck of its target. Finding a shipwreck can sometimes be the end of a mystery, but on other occasions, it might just be the beginning. In January 2015, a shipwreck was found at the bottom of Lake Michigan, USA, and nobody's 100% sure of the vessel's identity almost 7 years later. The construction of the ship is consistent with the style of 17th century shipbuilding, and the best guess of those who have relevant knowledge is that it might be the wreck of a ship called Le Griffon, which was built by the French explorer René Robert Cavelier, also known as Sieur de la Salle, in 1679. The vessel is known to have been lost on Lake Michigan later the same year. Great Lakes historian Brendan Baylod has other ideas. He thinks it might be the remains of a tugboat that was scuttled after it was made obsolete by the invention of the steam engine. However, even he has to acknowledge that there might be a carving of a griffin on the visible parts of the ship's bow at the bottom of the lake. It's hard to say for sure because the carving is covered in mussels, so the shape is distorted. The jury's still out on this mystery. Let's check out another mystery shipwreck. This time, it's one that was found in the Gulf of Mexico in 2012. We don't even have any good leads on its possible identity, but the evidence suggests that it was a very expensive loss for whoever owned it when it went down approximately 200 years ago. The vessel is full of valuable ceramics, glass bottles, and muskets. All of the cargo is still there aboard the ship, even after 2 centuries sitting 4,000 feet below the waves. The vessel's wooden hull has all but disintegrated in that time, but it was a well-made ship and featured a copper shell around the wood. The copper's turned green, but it's still there and still intact. The presence of the wreck was confirmed by divers after the first hint of it was detected by Shell Oil Company during a sonar survey in 2011. The survey team came across an unexpected blip on the seafloor, and divers were eventually sent to investigate. The ceramic plates aboard the unidentified wreck were extremely popular during the first few decades of the 19th century, which is what's helped experts to give the ship an approximate age. Why settle for one shipwreck when you could have almost 50? A geological exploration of the Black Sea carried out during 2016 revealed the presence of more than 40 previously unknown wrecks on the seabed, some of which are so old that they might date back to the days of the Byzantine Empire. The wrecks are clustered close together in the Bulgarian portion of the sea. This would have been considered an exceptional result if finding wrecks was the purpose of the survey, but the survey team wasn't even there to do that. They were attempting to find out more about the geologic history of the region. Finding the wrecks was an unexpected bonus. Any wooden ship from the Byzantine era would normally have rotted away by now, but the water at the bottom of the Black Sea is very low in oxygen. This offers excellent conditions for preservation, and so most of the ships look like they've been in the water for only a few decades. Even their masts are still standing upright. We could probably find out some of the secrets of 4th century shipbuilding by exploring the wrecks, but doing so is difficult because of their extreme depth. The sinking of the RMS Lusitania was the event that triggered American entry into the First World War. The ocean liner was bound from New York to Liverpool in May 1915 when it was attacked by a German U-boat of the Old Heed of Kinsale in Ireland. After being hit by a single torpedo, a secondary explosion happened inside the ship for unknown reasons, and the vessel sank in under 20 minutes. Only 761 of the 1,960 people aboard the Lusitania survived. Most of the casualties were American citizens. Images of the sinking ship were subsequently used in American war propaganda. The American and British governments both declared their outrage over the sinking of a passenger ship. The Germans insisted the Lusitania was a legitimate military target and was secretly carrying ammunition sent to the British by the Americans. The Allies consistently denied this allegation and used the incident to fuel public anger. When the war was eventually over and the wreck was examined, it was found to contain more than 4 million rounds of machine gun ammunition in its cargo, in addition to 5,000 shrapnel shell casings and 3,000 brass percussion artillery fuses. These weapons shouldn't have exploded though, and the cause of the secondary explosion remains unknown. The sinking of the Italian vessel SS Andrea Doria was a disaster when it happened in July 1956, and continues to be a disaster for many of those who attempt to dive to look at her wreck today. The ship was a great source of national pride in the post-war years for Italy. It was the biggest, fastest, and safest vessel in the fleet. It could not, however, survive a head-on collision with another large ship. The Andrea Doria was approaching the coast of Nantucket on its way to New York City, USA on July 25th, when the eastbound Swedish-American line vessel MS Stockholm smashed straight into the Andrea Doria's side. A combination of heavy fog and human error by the crew of the Andrea Doria were later determined to be the causes of the collision. Most of the passengers and crew were able to escape, but the ship was badly damaged and slipped below the waves. It's now under 200 feet of water, but the water is very cold and pitch black at that depth. There are also strong currents to contend with, fishing nets to get trapped in, and staged decompression stops to contend with. For all these reasons, divers consider it the Mount Everest of shipwrecks and see it as a test of their abilities. 22 people have died between 1956 and 2017 by failing that test. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon!